So on the last video, we got this little guy to post. We had a couple of issues. What we did is we put the little, this little guy in. He doesn't even need any power. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean this whole thing up. We'll get the power supply in. We'll cable manage everything. We've got to get a drive in there because we need an operating system at some point. The other thing that you were saying before is, well, we have this extra fan from the back where we put the Corsair cooler in. And there might be space up the front there for that. So we'll take this off and see if we can shift some things around and get an extra fan in because
everybody likes more air. So now that the PC posts and everything's running beautifully, it's time to unplug everything again. You want to really make sure that no power is going into the PC when you start making changes, because that's bad.
Once we get the power supply sitting in the bottom here on the little rubber feet, you want to make sure it's nice and snug. We then tighten the screws on the back and make sure it's not rattling around at all. Since we don't have any large mechanical drives, we're actually going to remove these 3 hard drive cages.
We mentioned the fan we pulled off the back that came with the case. We're actually ending up putting that on the front of the case because we have extra space, and who doesn't like a bit more airflow?
Because this PC is actually going to be sitting with some other PCs that will be doing the same kind of exhaust, we don't want to pull that hot air from adjacent PCs in the back.
So next we're going to start fiddling with all the little cables that we've funneled through the back, starting off with the SATA cable for the SSD. We're also going to start plugging in the HD audio from the front panel, so you know, if you want to use the front panel for some audio, you have that option, as well as, you know, the USB slots up there. There are specific slots on your motherboard for CPU fans. These are where you're going to want to plug in both the CPU fan that we have in the back next to the radiator, as well as the pump that sits directly on top of the CPU socket. Double check your manual to make sure that everything's going into the correct slot, because that's going to have all the relevant and correct information.
The beefy motherboard connector is a pretty easy one to find out where it goes. Just slot that in and we should be good to go.
Really only fits in one spot, so I'd be impressed if anybody fit it in some other spot. So now we're on the back of the case. We want to make sure that we get power going through all the fans in the case. Luckily enough, this case has a fan control in the front of it, so most of it slots through the same power and the same cables, so it was pretty simple just to give it one set of power and then it all kind of daisy chained into one single area. Note that the fan control that we actually have on the front of this case doesn't apply to the CPU fan or pump. It's actually just for the case fans. Next thing we're going to grab is the SATA power cable and simply just plug in the front panel so that has power.
We'll also be using this to power our SSD, so we want to make sure that we use one that's going to fit in kind of nicely. In this case, the SSD doesn't fit behind the cage and actually mounts on the front. You'll have to make sure that whatever case you are using, you use the right method. Once the SSD is mounted, we'll need to plug in both the SATA cable and the SATA power to make sure it has everything it needs. But it's much easier to plug them in when it's not mounted to the case. Once everything's plugged into the right place, throw away those crappy twisty ties and find the luxurious Velcro ties that you probably have lying around.
Just like a great mullet, this PC needs to make sure that the party's in the front, but we're all business in the back. Also, that saying is definitely the other way around, but hey, it works.
We also don't need this cage at the top for any optical drives or floppy drives, as much as I'd love to think that we do. So we're going to remove that and make some extra space.
As demonstrated by Hamish's lovely hand, we do have an extra space on top with the removal of the optic drive, so we could fit in another fan if we wanted to.
So that's all that we have to do today. We just get the front and side panels on, and then we can boot this up and start encoding some streams.